couple, Caleb and Catherine. Caleb is a firefighter and Catherine works in a hospital. They've been married for 7 years but are headed for divorce. The film describes their struggles. At the beginning, everything seems hopeless. All seems lost. And then through the influence of some people in Caleb's life, things begin to change. At this point in the movie that we're about to see, it looks like it's over. In the scene we're about to see, Caleb, who is played by actor Kirk Cameron, talking to a fellow firefighter who is trying to help him through his struggles. Now, I'd imagine that when you got married, you said some vows that sounded something like this. Man, you probably said something like this. I take you to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold for this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death parts us, according to the command of God. And for the woman, you probably said something like this. I take you to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death parts us, according to the command of God. Now, in the film clip, actor Michael said that when many people make these vows, they don't really mean the better for worse, they just mean the better. The problem is that in a marriage, there is a lot of worse with the better. But the truth is that for the marriage, it is the better for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. And we are bonded together as we make our marriage vows. And if we break those vows, it does damage us both. Caleb's objection, and he frames it from the perspective of a professional fighter, was that marriages aren't fireproof. They don't always work. Sometimes you get burned. But the question is there a way to make marriage more fireproof? But what does fireproof mean? The dictionary defines it as being capable of withstanding or preventing damage by fire. Fireproof doesn't mean that fire will never come, but when it comes, you will be able to withstand it. So the question is, how can we have a fireproof marriage? A marriage that can not only withstand but thrive during the better for worse, the richer for poor, the sickness and the health. The answer is by understanding how the author of marriage, God, has designed it to be and living out our marriage that way. So how is it that God has designed the marriage to be? In Matthew chapter 19, verse 4, Jesus says, "Haven't you read," he replied, "that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, 'For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one. Therefore what God has joined together, let man not separate it.'" God has created the marriage relationship for male and female, and there is a goal in mind in this relationship. It's that they become one flesh. But in order for this to happen, what must take place? First, there must be a leaving of the dependency on their parents, and they must now establish a new family unit. Our parents have raised us to be mature human beings, but when we get married, we are to take over that responsibility. And from then on, there is no other relationship more important in this life, on this earth, than our relationship with our spouse. Secondly, we must be united with our spouse. In some versions of the Bible, it's called cleaving to your spouse. This means to cling to glue to be bonded to remain close to. The bond of marriage is to be permanent. It's to be lasting. When you said your wedding vows, you were making a promise to God, to your spouse, and to everyone else who was there. Then third, the goal is to become one flesh. Listen to this quote. God's plan for marriage is that the two become one. And this is much more than just sharing the same residence, the same food, the same bed. It is two people giving themselves to one another until their lives are woven together into one. This is God's design for marriage, to become one person. But what does this look like in a marriage? Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21 says to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. What does the word submit mean, and what does it have to do with God's design for marriage? The word submit means to line yourself up under. Basically, it means to give up your rights to your spouse. Husbands and wives are to line themselves up under each other to make the marriage work. Each are to give up their rights for the other. Each is to look out for the best interests of the other. Each is to think of the other before they think of themselves. In marriage, there is to be mutual submission. 1 Peter 3 says to wives, be submissive to your husbands, and husbands, it says, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. What does that mean? It means that we do what it takes to make our spouse grow, flourish, and because we want what is best for them, then we do what we can to help that process along, even when it means that we sacrifice our things. We give up what we want for what they need. Ephesians 5:33 says, each one of you must also love his wife as he loves himself, and his wife must respect her husband. To have a fireproof marriage, husbands are to love their wives, and wives are to respect their husbands. But now, why is it, though, that husbands and wives here are not given the same command? Why is it the husband is told to love his wife, but the wife is not told to love her husband? Why is it the wife is told to respect her husband, but the husband is not told to respect his wife? Does a wife have to love her husband? Yes. Does a husband have to respect his wife? Yes. You can't truly love without respecting, and you can't truly respect without loving in a marriage. So I believe there's a difference here because of the different ways that men and women receive what we need from each other. Men want to be loved, but their real need here is to be respected. Women want to be respected, but their real need here is to be loved. This is a reflection of the fact that men and women are different and have different needs in a marriage. Many years ago, I read a book by a Christian counselor named Willard Harley. The name of the book was called His Needs, Her Needs. The premise of that book was that in his many years of marriage counseling, he discovered that men and women have different needs that they come to a marriage with. In his counseling, he came to the conclusion that for the men, the top 5 needs in a marriage relationship are sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, an attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration. Top needs for a woman are affection, conversation, honesty, financial commitment, and family commitment. Now, they're not the same for everybody, but in general, this is what he found to be the case. And that for men and women, then, marriage is truly not complete unless their spouse meets those needs in their lives. But again, the problem is that the top needs for a man are almost always different from the top needs for a woman, and often each one comes to the marriage with the assumption that they both have the same needs. And when they find out they don't, they're confused, they're hurt, they're frustrated. So solution, the author says, is this. It is not only to understand how different we are, but to learn the different needs of each other and begin to meet those needs. In the film clip, Caleb said that their marriage is not working because they're very different people. Men and women are different. And one of the issues in Fireproof between Caleb and Catherine is that they're having a hard time relating to someone who is so different from themselves. Now, are men and women really that different? Studies conclude that they are. For example, there are obvious physical differences between men and women. We all know that. But men have thicker skulls, thicker skin, more red blood cells, more muscle tissue. Women are more resistant to heat and cold and tend to outlive men by 5 years. From the first moment of birth, little girls have more lip and mouth movement than boys. In a hard study of hundreds of preschoolers, researchers found that 100% of the sounds coming from the little girls' mouths were words, whereas only 60% of the sounds coming from little boys' mouths were words. The other 40% were yells and sound effects like vroom, vroom. Psychologist Gary Smalley says, this difference persists into adulthood. Communication experts say that the average woman speaks over 25,000 words a day, while the average man speaks a little over 10,000 words a day. What does this mean in marital terms? Very often a man has already used up his 10,000 words at work while his wife is just warming up. Several thousand women were asked how much time they need to spend with their husbands in meaningful conversation, and they said 45 minutes to an hour each day. On the other hand, their husbands said 15 to 20 minutes is enough, once or twice a week. So how do we have a fireproof marriage when men and women are so different? Again, We need to understand that we are different, that we have different needs, and we need to not expect the other to be just like we are. We need to learn what our spouse's needs are. We need to be a student of what makes them tick. Then we need to begin to learn to meet those needs. Never stop learning about your spouse, even if you've been married for 40 years. Really work on meeting the most important needs, the top needs. Sacrifice to do this. Do it when it takes time and things away that you'd like to spend on yourself. In the movie Fireproof, Caleb actually does this for Catherine. It takes a while, but eventually she responds to it. Meeting someone else's needs makes an impact. It changes you. It makes you less self-centered and breaks down the walls between you. And soon the other person wants to return the favor and meet your needs. Now, all that I've said here today is built on an assumption. It's that your marriage is built on the foundation of a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Caleb's father in this clip teaches him that Caleb is not only struggling with his marriage relationship, the relationship with his wife, but his father is also teaching them that Caleb is struggling with his relationship with God, a relationship that he needs if his marriage is to work. Since God is the designer of marriage, it follows then that marriage is to have a foundation of a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. For a marriage to be fireproof, both spouses need to make a personal commitment to Jesus Christ and a commitment to live out the marriage in the way that God has intended, God has designed. So, husbands and wives, grow spiritually together. Pray together. Read your Bible together. Get involved in church together. Teach these things to your children together. Do all those things that would help you grow individually, spiritually, and do them together. God has designed a marriage so that as you grow closer to God, you grow closer to each other. Do you want a fireproof marriage? A marriage that can not only withstand but thrive during the for better, for worse, the richer for poor, the sickness and in health. A fireproof marriage comes by understanding how the author of marriage, God, has designed it to be and living out our marriage in that way.